And it is time once again to get solar powered. We welcome you back to the Solar Powered Podcast. I'm Ryan Hall from Whale Hearts Media. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. And I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while. When I first knew that she was writing a book, I knew that she had a powerful story, but I honestly had no idea how powerful it was until I read the book. But she's truly a fascinating woman. She's I guess you could call her a retired sportscaster. Um, you know, in-demand public speaker, and now incredible author. She's been on the 700 Club multiple times, and she has college football Hall of Famers in her cell phone that she can text on a moment's notice. But it is truly an honor to welcome my friend Rachel Baribeau. She is the author of an incredible new book called Relentless Joy, and it is truly an honor to welcome you here, Rachel. Thank you for joining us here on episode 102 of the Solar Powered Podcast.
That's awesome. Well, I had to have my Relentless Joy today because I've been dealing with a big old case of the Mondays and problems that came up out of nowhere that stole half my day. And so this is definitely one of those days where I am using the book and everything in the book to boomerang back to me. And it happens often where people will use something from the book and will give it back to me. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I needed that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is part of the subtitle of the book.
Yeah.
If you have to fight for it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
All right. So let's just kind of get started here. Tell the listeners a little bit about just what your background is, what your, just, and really how we got connected.
Yeah, absolutely. Sports. We got connected in sports. I was a sportscaster for 17 years and covered the Crimson Tide, covered the SEC, covered the ACC, went on to become the first female host on SiriusXM on their collegiate channels. Still vote for the Heisman, one of very few women in the world, just around 800 people, a little over 800 people vote for the Heisman. And so I still do that, and that's really amazing. And I did that for 17 years, and I retired in 2019. And for the last 7 years, I've run a movement called I'm Changing the Narrative. I travel the country and speak about good love for yourself and others, interpersonal relationships, mental health, joy, so many things like that. A purpose beyond your job or athletics. It started in colleges, but it has spread out now to prisons and border patrol and college, or not just colleges, police departments and high schools and junior highs and K-5 and churches and corporations. Basically, wherever people will have me, I'll go. And I say you're never too old or too young to be who you were created to be. Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a ride.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that we're recording this on August 7th. And just yesterday, I believe you were out at TCU speaking to their football team.
I was, and it was really special. Really, every time it's special. And one of the guys asked me, he was like, how do you keep it from, how do you keep this passion, this drive? And I said, well, first of all, here's the reality of it. I still feel the same way that I did doing this 7 years ago. So on August 26th is our 7th year anniversary for I'm Changing the Narrative. And I remember the butterflies and through the roof and excitement that I felt when I went into FSU football. I still feel the exact same way. In fact, I probably feel more locked in because I know the impact that these talks have on young people. I know the impact when a coach says, our players believe in you. We're going to continue to have you in, like a Sonny Dykes, like a PJ Fleck, like a Mike Loxley, where they say, you know what, repeated exposure to you is best. And my players trust me. And you can talk about love, relationships, soul, purpose, job, connection, mental health. masculinity, ideas, from a woman, you can do all those things. And so I was just at TCU, and I was going to record a podcast later if I ever get through this never ending day myself, to talk about the impact that we had. And it was phenomenal. We talked about I don't usually name my talks, but this was love and mentals. And obviously them going to the national championship last year, I told him, I said, in some small way, I'd like to believe that I had the talk that we had last time at this year had something to do with that. And they screamed out, you did it, you did. And I'm like, I'm up there crying,
Oh, wow.
And so we talk about connection in this talk on Saturday. And at the end, I do something different because I'm constantly growing. That's what a king or a queen is, Ryan. I'm getting to a point here. But a king or a queen is somebody who's constantly growing, looking at yourself in the mirror, going, there's a source of pain. I need to sit with that. I'm curious about that. I want to learn something. I want to grow. I want to change. I want to move, all those things. And so I'm constantly doing that. The last 3 or 4 years, particularly the last 2 years, I've started saying to players and to people, if you've got a question in the middle of my talk, ask it. Some speakers would be terrified to do that because it would get them off their outline. I'm not scared of that because it can take you in new and interesting directions. And so we did that, and they were asking me things. We were going places we wouldn't have gone. We were vulnerable. We were all taking off our mask. And I told them about the power of connection and how when you love each other and see each other and go to bat for each other, and how the seniors would be totally, and I had them stand up. Will you be there for these young guys if they're homesick, if they're depressed, if they're any of these things? They stood up, they said yes. So I'm getting ready to end. There were a million amazing points to this talk, but I'm getting ready at the end to wrap up. And I thought everybody had asked all their questions. And all of a sudden this guy pops up and says, hey, she talked about the power of connection, and one of our own went down today in practice. I want y'all to get out your phones right now, and I want you to encourage him. And so all the players got out their phone and texted this teammate who had gone down in practice.
Wow.
And he probably got 100, plus text messages of, hey man, I love you. I see you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm over there just going, just dying,
just losing it. Yeah.
And one of the players on the way out said to me, Miss Rachel, he said, that never would have happened without you. And this is it. I said on 700 Club, people have asked me for the longest time, like, how do you quantify what you do? And for the longest time, I've never been able to describe it. But I think recently I found some meager words. And for me, it feels like the closest thing to heaven that I'm ever going to get in this world. Like the closest thing to perfection and being used and walking in your purpose and perfect agape love and just serving your guts out. And I don't know what heaven is like. I know what they tell us it's like. I know what my mom is probably experiencing. But when I have a part in that, in something like that, and knowing that young man probably got 150 texts, whatever it was, like to me, that feels heaven-like right here on this earth, right? And that's the work I get to do every single day, and it blows my mind. Yeah.
I love it. And that's just, I think, really a testimony to just really the power of that connection. Because if you think about it, those are guys who are going to go out and fight like hell out on the field for the, for just like fight like hell for each other to be able to take that next step, regardless of, how that championship game ended. But those are guys who are going to just fight for each other to be able to just absolutely, just go to war for each other. And that, I think, is the power of that work and really of that connection.
It is. And I have seen it over and over again. I've seen it over and over again in a corporation, in a business, in a family. When you take off the mask and you see each other for what you are, like what you really are, what you've really been through, that's where the true magic and connection happens. I've seen it with championship teams over and over again. When your teammate knows you battled depression or anxiety, or your parents got divorced, or you're going through a bad breakup, not, I got it all together, what traditional masculinity tells us. Those teams, I've seen them win national championships. I've seen them win bowl games. I've seen them go on to do deeper, more profound things because they see each other. And I told those coaches too, and the players were screaming, and I love them because we snap, we scream, we cheer in my talks. And I told the coaches in the back, I said, you know what your players want in an age of NIL and in an age of the portal? They want connection. They want to know you care about them, that they're not a commodity, and and the players are going, yeah, tell them, and that's how you're going to keep a player these days. In addition to other things, I'm not an idiot, but in a deep soul connection, that's everything. That's what we should be going, no matter where you are in life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, you're more than just the logo on your helmet or the name across your jersey.
Amen.
Yeah. And we're going to get to your book here in a little bit, but I would be remiss if I didn't get you to talk a little bit about kind of the impetus of I'm Changing the Narrative, because a lot of it has to do with connection with a man who was a star in the NFL. He was a star in college, but a man named Kevin Turner.
Yeah.
If you could maybe share a little bit about kind of your relationship with him and how that morphed into I'm Changing the Narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. He walked into my studio. I told the story of him on Saturday night. I don't always tell the story of him. It just depends, but I like to still when I can. And I told about how, he had no self-pity in him, that some people were swimming in the baby pool of self-pity, and he did not. He had none of it. He had just been diagnosed with ALS. And somebody said, you need to interview him. I thought I would do a radio interview. Here he comes in the studio. He needed help opening his soda top bottle. He needed help adjusting the headset volume. And quite honestly, Ryan, I felt sorry for him. I didn't want to, but I felt pity for him. And he picked up on it, and he said something in the interview so profound, I've never forgotten it. And he said, you could step off a curve tomorrow and get hit by a bus. I got a heads up on my life. I say I'm sorry. I hug my kids. I live every day to the fullest. Yeah. And never forgotten it. And I teach it all over the country, and it keeps me honest myself, because I was teaching the TCU players about perspective. And I was telling them that I recently heard it from different people, but it's this idea of almost, and it's going to sound funky, but like, look at yourself almost like you're an alien and you've never been here before, never been to Earth, never seen a tree, never seen a football, never seen you don't know what the game of football is, never gotten a hug. Like, when you start to look at those things, I said, you ain't never seen this, you ain't never seen that, in the video that TCU put out. But when you start to do that, man, like, hugs become special. Football becomes special. This building becomes special. A phone becomes special, man. And that fresh perspective will keep you grounded and grateful. And that's what Kevin Turner taught me. He was the author of that for me. I organized a climb up Kilimanjaro. We raised money. There was a documentary made by Mike Ditka. It was unreal. And he made a profound impact on my life. And he's a huge reason why I ever started I'm Changing the Narrative in the first place. Yeah.
He just, from everything I've heard about him, he's just a really special guy. Heck of a player, but just a really special guy.
Amazing human being. I remember we watched the documentary, it premiered at his house before everybody else. And he was on his computer and kind of typing, and I was crying, and he didn't like people to cry in front of him. And
wait, you were crying?
I know. I cried everything. Cry when I'm happy.
Go figure.
And so he typed out, he said, stop crying. He said, next up, climb for Kevin naked, like, I was like, and we all stopped crying, of course, because we pictured each other naked, it's terrible. And so
That's the documentary that should have happened.
so yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, and really kind of as an offshoot of um I'm changing the narrative,
Mhm.
really became Relentless Joy. Now,
Mhm.
just full disclosure, Rachel's middle name is Joy, and she makes sure that she uses it in her branding
Yep.
for very good reason.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about how that book came about? Because it really came out, just full disclosure, it really came about after really in a dark place in your life.
I've had, I just was telling somebody in a text, they were asking to help me get booked, if they could help me get booked somewhere. And I was telling them like the ins and outs and different things. And I said, you need to understand, full disclosure, a lot of people see me traveling and they see the travel stories and they see the glamorous part. What they don't see is they see the speaking. They don't see the 27 texts that I send to a coach over a year, encouraging him or whatever it may be, or the 10 texts it takes to close a deal, or they don't see the massive amount of players that message me, some in the middle of the night. I want that. I'm open to that. They don't see the heavy burden of this. They don't see what it takes to run a movement. They don't see the studying and all of the things, right? So, I recognize that people see the outside of my life and think it's so glamorous. And truth be told, I've had some tremendous highs in my life, but I've also had some soul crushing lows. I've lost both my parents. I've been through addiction. I almost took my own life. I've lost all my worldly possessions. After the pandemic and after my mother passed away, I lost my house. And yeah, and I wrote the book because I wanted people to know that in the midst of those things and after those things and all around those things, there was still joy. And it was just begging to be noticed. And I've been in the bitter places where you don't notice it, where you're like, you're over it. You're done. You're done with people. You're done with experiences. You're done. And you've been through a lot, right? You get it. And it's easy to go to that bitter place, but I want to teach people there's a better place. There's a better place. And I want to get out of the bitter place and get to the better place. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I think that was really one of the most powerful messages that I took from the book is that, yeah, we've all seen a lot of darkness. I mean, Lord knows I have, you have. If you've been alive longer than a minute and a half, you have seen those dark moments. But it's really like finding the little moments in your life, finding that connection, finding the joy in a song that you hear, or finding the joy in having a bunny pass your path as you're walking your dog. Just like the little things in your life, that stuff adds up.
You gotta be open to it. And sometimes our pain blinds us to it. It blinds us to the little flower that's pushing up to the concrete, or the red bird that you saw this morning. Yesterday, I saw for the first time in my life, never seen it. I've seen a hummingbird on a feeder before. I've never seen a hummingbird on a real flower before. And a hummingbird came on my back porch and was feeding on this flower, this plant that I have. And I was like, I've never seen that before. And the other thing that keeps us from joy is, and you ready for this one? Busy. I'm too busy.
Bingo.
Busy.
Yep.
I'm too busy. I'm too busy to remember that. I'm too busy to do that. I'm too busy. I'm busy. I'm busy. And I'm the world's worst. I mean, you got my text today. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm, blah, 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 but when I slow down, and this work, the other thing about this work that I love is it keeps me honest. I just told these guys at TCU, I said, I can't come in here beefing with somebody. I can't come in here beefing with my husband. I can't come in here having, yelled at the flight attendant this morning. If I'm not living to the work that I'm teaching you, I will be a hypocrite. It comes back to haunt me. I can't sleep with myself. So, yeah, man, it's this book. I tell people this. It is not a pretty fluffy book on joy. And there are plenty of those. Plenty. This is gritty, hard, dirty, beautiful, transformative, all of those things. And it's all those things on joy. And that's to me, a new way of looking at it for a lot of people. Like, I can't be joyful. This is going on. There's still joy, baby. There's still joy.
Yeah, it's like they get blind to the pain, and that's the only thing that they know. I've been guilty of that. That they get blind to the pain. They get blind to just, this is all there is.
Yep.
And they don't choose to see that there is beauty out there, that there is joy out there, that there is hope, even in the darkest moments.
Amen. Amen. It's there. And it takes practice. And the other thing that I say in the book, and you read it, and thank you for reading it, is that it takes practice. Like, it's not like I'm joyful one day and then you're joyful for the whole year. You've got to at the end of each chapter, there's something called a joy start for those for on your YouTube. It's a blue book. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere where books are sold, independent bookstores, wherever. And there's a thing at the end of each chapter called a joy start. And it is where you literally put into practice what I just taught in that chapter. And what I also love about the book is there's scientific studies in there. There's historical studies. There's, I take you to Africa, I take you to Israel. And I think the coolest thing is people say, I hear your voice. Like, it's not just an audible version. Like, I can hear you talking to me just the way you talk to me right now. You're talking to me in that same way when you're writing to me. But those joy starts allow us to start cultivating a life of gratitude and joy and putting it into practice. It's not just going to happen. And it's a repeated thing that helps you live this way. I'm living on a different plane now. And I've always had a grateful, happy heart. But I'm living in a different way now. And it's a way of self-reflection and love for others. And like, I've got a servant's heart, and I got a lot of joy, man. And even today, God, recognizing this time with you, it was a little joyful spot in a hard day, and it wasn't hard compared to what other people, but it was just, one of those, okay, so the Mondays, and I don't usually advocate, but being with you has been a joy start for me today. It's been a shot of joy for me today. Yeah.
I'm honored. Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for putting all the breakdowns aside and still choosing to join me here today. Speaking of in that story, the story that you share on your trip to Israel about the Holocaust survivor, I think that story right there is enough to really wake people up to, the absolute torture and hell that he must have witnessed, but still be able to share his story with really a group of strangers, but to still be able to share his story in such a profound way, that I think can really wake a lot of people up. That one anecdote right there.
Yeah, I just came across a picture of him last night, and I shared it. So I have a club that spawned off the book called the Joy Starters Club. And it's cost of a cup of coffee a month. It's going up soon, but you get these joyful texts, you get a challenge, you get a journal, a physical journal mailed to you. You get quarterly presents. You're like in a club. We do talks, different things like that. But I just was sharing a picture of him, and the prompt for this month was all about travel and like the joy in travel. And it was saying, talk to people when you travel. The coolest things happen to me at airports when I speak to somebody, right? Like when I talk to somebody. I was on a tour with that gentleman's grandson. He was a tour director. He was speaking, he didn't even speak my language, the grandfather. But I started asking his grandson, about him, and the grandson started translating. And then, and then before we know it, like we weren't even speaking the same language. We could feel his heart. He's telling the whole story at the table. And had I not gone deep with him, which I tell people to do that, I don't know that the grandfather would have told the story to the whole table. Now the story was it's in a Holocaust, Detroit Holocaust Museum, but I wouldn't have gotten it. I would have never known that the guy's grandfather was a Holocaust survivor. So go deep with people, man. Go deep with people. It matters. Yeah.
Yeah. Get on their level and go deep. That's a really powerful statement. That's a really powerful statement because you don't know where that joy, you don't know where that power is going to come from.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. I'm telling you, relentless joy. And you don't know, like I sat next to a woman yesterday on the plane and coming home from TCU. She had herself a couple of cocktails. She was asking for a few at a time. And I was like, oh, okay. She must be on the way to a trip or something, like she's having herself a good old time. No judgment, just, noticed. And so I noticed her reading, and then I was reading. And I haven't told this story yet. It's actually going to go in the next book. Now I was reading, and towards the end of the flight, I said, I didn't have a book because I'd given all my books out at TCU, but I said, here's a postcard. I wish I had a book. You can get on Amazon. You're a reader. And I started to ask her, where she was going. And her name, I won't share her name actually, but she tells me she's about 60s. And she tells me that she was actually coming to Florida. Her mother's 88, and her mother had just had either some sort of stroke or brain lesion or brain cancer. And all the kids were coming to say goodbye to their mother. And that wouldn't be much for a lot of people, but for those who have lost a parent and have been through what I've been through, it was absolute kismet. So I have just taken on this unofficial weird role, and it's God keeps sending people to me, Ryan, to help them understand what the last moments of their lives their parents' lives are going to be like, and what to do in those moments, because I've been there. And so I've been getting a lot of these people over that, since my mom passed away the last 4 years. But this woman, I was able to tell her, get in bed with your mommy, play her favorite music, take pictures, write down recipes, any moments of lucidity, she has. And so she was taking this all in. And I said, I know this is going to seem really weird. The plane's landing. I said, could I pray with you? And so I just grabbed her hand and I just prayed with her for the strength that she was going to need to walk her mom out of the world. And so that was that. She left, and I was walking into the restroom, and I guess she left her sunglasses. So she walks back in. I wasn't going to try to bug her again. I was washing my hands, and she was down towards the end of the sink, and she comes by me, and she doesn't even ask. She just grabs me, and she just hugs me and holds on. And you got this, you got this. And so I would have never had that opportunity to minister to her in her moment of need had I not chosen to take the step to go deep with somebody, or just the very step of just speaking to somebody, the first conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. Just getting past that level of she's a little tipsy on a plane.
Yeah. Yeah. Or woo, like she's about to go to party, like,
right.
And also it was more interesting. It was also interesting for me, like, what are our snap judgments we make about people that we would never say out loud? We're like, ooh, he's dressed this way. Ooh, he's acting this way. Ooh, he's drinking, like whatever. It looks like this. He lives here. He does this for work. Like, what are our snap judgments as inherent biases, if you will, that are inside of our head that we would never articulate, but we think it, and it shades our thoughts of them. And so I was even thinking about that. I noticed that she was, having several cocktails at once. It didn't make me, I didn't judge her for it, but at a time in my life, different times in my life, absolutely may have. And so it's being, all of this is about self-awareness, being aware enough of myself, right, to say, yeah, did I make a snap judgment? Would I? What did I do? You see what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, some super deep stuff, soul work I call what I do soul homework. But if you'll do it, man, it's so worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing soul homework on the solar powered podcast. I
Yeah,
like it.
that's a good one.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. What would be what would be, I think, an important takeaway that I know people put their own value to what they read, what they consume. Well, what would you hope would be the biggest takeaway that somebody might get from reading Relentless Joy?
Forgiveness is a huge one. Forgive yourself, forgive others. Also this idea that we're all walking each other home. We're not, and I told the players that on Saturday. We all think we have this luxury of so much time. You truly don't know how much time you have. You don't. I don't. Right. And so this idea of I'm changing the narrative is just takes this these principles of say it now, do it now, forgive, go for it now, and don't put it off, because we don't know that we're promised another day. And I teach people on this as well. Regret is the nastiest bedfellow, man. It is. It's an avoidable emotion, and it's a very nasty emotion. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It really is. I'm reminded of the line from one of my favorite Allman Brothers songs, "Ain't wasting time no more." You
Mm,
can't let one precious day slip by.
man.
Because when you're holding on to the resentment, to the anger, to the bitterness of somebody that you may have perceived did you wrong, it's just doing nothing but giving you gray hair and stressing you out.
Yep.
There's really there's really no value that you can take away from that except for gray hair and stress.
Yeah. Amen to that. It doesn't do us any
Yep.
good. I think about when I'm about to get wound up about something with my husband, because marriage teaches me a lot. I think, am I going to think about this or worry about this? You've heard this one: 5 years, 5 days, 5 weeks. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I love it. I love it. Um, One more thing before we let you go. I know you don't cover college football anymore,
Yeah.
but I know
Yeah.
you're still a massive fan.
Yeah.
And as I've said before, I have forgiven you for graduating from that other school in the state of Alabama. But and we're just about to get started here. And August is always the longest month of the year for a college football junkie. But what are some of the biggest stories you see coming out of college football this year? Is it about can Georgia do it again, or do you think it's something else?
Yeah. I mean, there's a number of stories like, okay, I'll just run down the list of things that intrigue me. One, first of all, football intrigues me. I don't care. I mean, I care, but this expansion and realignment talk is like, you know, um, also would say along those lines, even though I just said that, I have to make this statement. Oh my gosh, what happened to the Pac-12? Like the hubris and like the ego, and all of a sudden the Pac-12 doesn't exist. Like it barely exists. Somewhat, and I'm like, and the Big 12? I didn't see the Big 12 walking out and being the winner in all this.
I did not see that one coming.
I didn't see it coming at all. And so that's interesting to me. I don't know this NIL thing, man. We let Pandora out of the box without any plan. I think the NCAA did. And I think it is a lot of cast of characters that are unsavory and unscrupulous. And I remember the AFCA told me last year that I called about speaking at their convention, and they said, "Oh, we're focused on NIL money this year." I said, "But don't you understand money and mental health are absolutely connected? You give an 18-year-old massive amounts of cash and his money that have never and his family that have never had it, and you can't tell me that doesn't affect his mentals." So that's another one that's interesting to me. Yes, can Georgia do it again? I also heard some rumblings earlier this year about kind of culture issues at Georgia. So that's one that's interesting to me. I also think on the Northwestern thing, Rye, that there are there are, I read an article that lawyers are now looking for, other schools, other players to talk to them. And so, like, for example, a hit piece came out on PJ Fleck recently. I've worked with PJ Fleck for 6 years. Is PJ Fleck everybody's cup of tea? Heck no. Is he different? Heck yes. Does he have a standard? And I think, heck yes. But do I think that anything that went on, like what went on at Northwestern, went on in Minnesota? No, absolutely not. I don't believe it for a day. I think that there's a lot of lawyers looking now. And I said this the other day at TCU. I promise I'm almost done. I've been thinking a lot about these things. You better as a coach be who you say you are now these days. You can't run and hide. You can't not do it right. You can't do it. And so that's interesting to me. This whole idea that Nick Saban is no longer dominant because they haven't been to the play. I'm like that. Just, that's crazy to me. So just,
as an Alabama fan, I'm not even seeing that one. I mean,
that's just stupid.
He's still the man. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Or that was summer fodder when people didn't have anything to talk about. I think that's what that was.
When people are bored and waiting for August to start. Yeah. Well, how can people find you online, and how can people find a copy of this incredible book?
Yes, they can go to Amazon and grab it there, or anywhere where books are sold. Two things: you can go to rachelbaribeau.com. Everything there about coaching, joy starters, courses, all sorts of things there. And so rachelbaribeau.com, you can find the links in any of my socials. All my socials are at Rachel Baribeau. Or you can go to imchangingthenarrative.org, the letter I, the letter M, changingthenarrative.org, to find out about the movement. And I answer my own emails. So I love to hear from people.
Yes, you do.
Does not answer.
I appreciate that. And I will, of course, include links to all that stuff. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been a real treat.
I just adore you, friend. I'm so happy for your success. And just so happy for everything that is happening to you. And thank you for being my friend.
My pleasure. Same here. It's truly an honor. And thank you for watching and listening to the Solar Powered Podcast. For more information about me or my business, just go to royalheartsmedia.com. You can follow me on the social media machine at Ryan Hall Writes on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or shoot me a good old-fashioned email at royalheartscoaching@gmail.com. But that'll do it for this episode. Until we meet again, this is Ryan Hall saying thanks for listening. So long for now. I love you all, and go get solar power.